And we're back. Stoppage Time FC, Know Your Role Edition. We're going purely educational football 101. We're going to take a break from the reviews and this matchup. We purely going to talk about how this works because we got a lot of people who are new to the game. So myself, Joe, Zach, we're going to discuss every position on the field. We're going to start from the beginning, what position is what they do, the strategy, all that. But before we get into that, SCEN underscore THE is the Twitter. THE.SCEN is the Instagram. And of course, if you're watching this live or the replay, subscribe, notifications on. We got our main man, Germaldo, who's coming on camera to represent the people. Questions are plenty, of course. Zach, as we start to know your role, man, how excited are you about this? This is something we've been talking about, honestly, a couple of weeks. And now it's here. So just tell the people kind of about what we're going to do here today.
Yeah, man. Like this is why I kind of spawned the whole idea of know your role, was because I feel like soccer is one of those severely underrated sports, and the reason that people don't like it and don't watch it is because they just don't know. And being able, the one thing that I love about the scene is that you can go into any of the groups, whether it's 94, whether it's views, whether it's petty in the outfield, and you can ask questions about, well, why is this player doing this, and why does he do this when he plays this position, and you can get 3 or 4 answers that are all correct from different people, because that's the beauty of this. There's really no wrong answer in anything that you're going to hear tonight. It's a lot of it is personal preference, a lot of it is adaptability to what the players are playing, like who they're playing for, what team they're playing. But just being able to grasp the concept of the positions and their role and what they're expected to do, and kind of the qualities that make them what they are, that's the heart, that's the core of the game, and that's what makes it the beautiful game.
Exactly. Joe is our main man, Joe. Now, Joe in his professional life is in education, so this is perfect. And he's even brought the visual aid, which is absolutely perfect because one of the things we were doing, like, man, we don't have a diagram. It's going to be hard to describe. But our man Joe has come through. Joe, talk to us a little bit about just what we're going to be discussing this evening, and then certainly go ahead and present the diagram that we're going to be using to kind of describe things for the people.
Yeah, I'm a PE teacher in my day-to-day life, so I'm all about educating the masses, especially in sports. I knew that was what I wanted to do with my career, was sports and work with kids, and this is right up my alley. So we spent a little bit of time today and put together a quick PowerPoint presentation that's got the breakdown of some of the basic formation that a lot of teams use, and it's got to have all the positions on the field that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to spend some time talking about every one of them. I'll be able to move some of the pieces around so you guys can see where they like to operate, depending on the tactics that the managers of the particular teams might be implementing. So I'm excited about tonight, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. We spent a lot of time reviewing and talking about what's going on in the Premier League and the Champions League and some of the other things. And today is really the nuts and bolts to really get everybody's a firm understanding about what's going on the field. So when you start watching, hopefully soon, more games, you'll kind of understand some of the lingo, some of the terms that you're going to hear the announcers talk about, and what the guys on the field are actually going to be doing. So while we are talking, you guys will be able to see pretty much just the field. And the first formation that we're going to talk about is just the 4-3-3. So it's 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and then 3 attacking players with the goalie. So I'm going to share that screen now, and then you guys, that'll be up while we're all talking. And as each of us are taking our turns to chat, you guys will be able to see the screen and hear what we have to say.
Great. And Jermilson today, Germ likes, change his name. So Jermilson, certainly, brother, any question that you have, comment. As we said last stoppage time, and how it applies to life. There are no dumb questions today. This
Absolutely. I'm Jermiel's son.
Jermiel. Okay. All right.
Got Daniel's son, Jermiel's son.
Jermiel's son. Okay. All right.
Wax on, wax off.
There you go. Shout out Mr. Miyagi. All right. So we're going to start, even though we reviewed this position on a previous show, hey, we're going to pretend like we never talked about it. And that is that circle right where Joe is, that is the goalkeeper. Now, pretty basic. This is the man who's responsible for stopping shots. This is the man who's responsible for stopping goals. Only player that can use his hands within that box. So that arrow that you see right there, that's called the penalty area, if you want to call it. 18-yard box sometimes. But this is the area where the keeper can use his hands. Joe, Zach, but jump in here. Talk about some of the attributes of a good keeper and some of the things that in modern football, how this position actually has changed a little bit.
Go ahead, Joe.
The things that I look for, just because of my team we all know is Man City, and Ederson is our keeper, and he is a shot stopper. He's got extremely good reflexes. He's quick, and he's probably got the best left foot of a keeper that you could possibly want. He can put the ball out here to the left winger pretty much on a dime when he wants to. He's able to distribute the ball once he gets it off of a shot or an errant pass. He's able to pick up the ball and find his teammates quickly with a pass, either throw it from his feet. He's able to throw the ball out too really, really well with accuracy. So first thing, he's an extremely good shot stopper. So from your keeper, you definitely want someone first and foremost who's going to be able to stop shots, because otherwise, you're out of luck in that one. Then the second thing from modern day football that we're looking at from these keepers is that they're able to distribute the ball to their teammates and add another player that is passing the ball around. So it kind of creates some mismatches and some advantages for the offensive team to move the ball up the field. When in past years, the keeper would just kind of kick the ball up to the middle of the field and then hope for the best, and everybody would kind of jump up, use their head, try to knock the ball down. Now, a lot of the times, players or coaches are looking for their keeper to pass it to some of the defensive players that are back here, the fullbacks and the center backs, and kind of work their way up the field instead of just kicking it up the field. So you being able to use their feet and then being a shot stopper, having good reflexes, having good coordination. And I'll let Zach jump in with some other stuff because I know he's got a couple of attributes he likes too.
Yeah, man. So like, gone are the days of keepers being the worst player on the field. It used to be your least athletic guy, possibly your biggest and your tallest guy would be your goalkeeper. He would be he would be the least amount of liability sitting in the goal. So they would play him there. Now the role of a goalie has changed so much that a good chunk of the top teams do what we call playing it from the back. And so like Joe said, they use that goalie as almost an extra player to pass the ball. So your goalie now has to have good feet. He has to be able to pass the ball extremely well. He has to make smart, quick decisions, because a lot of times, and Joe can point out, like the midfielders will have possession, and if the other team is pressuring them and they need to find a place to pass the ball safely, they will pass it back to the goalie. And with that, the other team's attackers will pressure the goalie. Well, that goalie has to make a quick decision to, in turn, either pass it out right or left to the fullbacks, or find one of his center backs. And so you absolutely need quick reflexes. You need smart decision making. And for me, my number one quality is confidence. I have to have a confident keeper, and we look at, and I know that some of the guys are, when we go over these positions, we're going to talk about some of the best that have ever played that position, and a role model, if you will. For me, Manuel Neuer is the best goalkeeper to ever play this game. And he is the epitome of confidence. Now, sometimes that confidence will get him into trouble, and he'll get a little bit too overzealous with, his ability to play the ball at his feet. But he's been doing this for decades now, and he's in his mid to late 30s and still playing at the top tier of football. And he just won the Champions League last year. So for me, yeah, to caveat off of that, reflexes, be able to pass the ball, and number one for me is confidence.
Real quick, fellas, let me slide in real quick. Just want to give this disclaimer. In professional sports, your feet are probably your biggest attribute in every sport that there is. But the one thing that they call this football is because your feet are the most important part of the game, baby. That's the reason why. But with that being said, I got two questions. One of them is funny, and then the other question, I don't know exactly if he used the right terminology for it, but you guys can figure this out. Ty Love is in the comments. Shouts out to him. He says, "Is this the best formation to beat you guys in FIFA?" That's the first thing he says. So
the formation I use, so you don't want to use it against me because I'm better than he is. So.
Oh, well, see, there you go. See, Joe told you the truth. And then, so the other question he says, when should a keeper feel comfortable enough to come out and try to tackle? I don't know if that was the word he meant to use, but try to tackle the player with the ball because he attempts to score for a goal.
Okay, so in general, your keeper, if your keeper is making tackles, that means, which we're going to move to next, your defenders are way out of position. So if Joe, if you could put the arrow on the keeper. So if your keeper is out of the box, a lot of times, that means something bad is happening.
That usually means that your center backs are up here and have gotten beat, and now your keeper is one-on-one.
So we talked about being comfortable with the ball at their feet. That's true. But in general, your keeper really should be in this box 99%. If your keeper is way out here or way out in the perimeter, that means something's going wrong.
Somebody's made a mistake at that point.
Somebody is messed up if he's that far out.
And it's really a feel thing for the most part. There is no real general rule to it. It's really comes down to what Zach said with confidence and how that keeper is able to view what's going on in front of him. So if he feels like his best option at this point is to go out and pressure the attacker and cut down on the angle and make them go wider, then that might be the best bet. But sometimes it really isn't. There's no real rule of thumb. It's more how that keeper feels in the moment. It's an instincts thing.
I really think in this day and age, there's only two types of keepers now. There's the shot stoppers, and then what Manuel Neuer coined is the term sweeper keeper. The sweeper used to be an old defensive position. It's kind of your modern day center back, but it was essentially your last line of defense. Manuel Neuer is that kind of goalie. He routinely will be outside of his box to make those plays on, because a lot of teams will play the long ball and they'll try to pass the ball up past the defenders and allow their fast attacking forwards to catch up to the ball. Well, Neuer, for example, he will routinely chase after those balls, expose the goal, because he's confident enough that he's going to get to the ball before you. And so that's, Ty, I hope that answers what you're looking for, because I think that's kind of what a goalie does in those situations.
All right, moving up from the keeper, we have the two gentlemen in front of him. Another position we've talked about, but we'll revisit it, and that is center back. So you have these two right here, and the center back is what you would call, that is your last line of defense. This is the guys who are paid the big bucks, and center backs now do get paid the big bucks to stop the other team's attackers. Generally, they will be pretty much moved from one side of the penalty box to the other. So pretty much they go left to right, right to left. They'll come back, they'll go backwards into the penalty box, but generally that is their area. It's pretty much the width of that penalty box. Pretty standard, stop the attack. But now in 2020, they also start your attack. So your center back will take the possession from the keeper, and he can distribute it out to a midfielder. Or if you have one of those rare center backs who have great passing ability, they can even sometimes bypass the midfield and skip up to our attackers, which we'll talk about later. But these are your guys who are the great defenders. Guys like Virgil van Dijk, who plays for Liverpool, who have finished second in Ballon d'Or last year. This is the position where this is what you need. You have to have guys who can stop attack, and this is what center backs do. Joe, attributes of a great center back. What are we typically looking at?
Kind of the two things I like is communication, being able to talk to their fellow defenders and the guys in front of them, because they get to see the majority of the field. They can see pretty much where all of the other players are going to be. And the center back partnership, the two guys that are there together, they have to be in constant communication with each other, especially when you're facing some of the elite attackers and attacking teams going forward. So communication, number one, is super important, that they are able to relay what they see to their teammates, and keeping the back four, the four guys in the back, the defenders, the left back, right back, and the two center backs, keeping them organized and keeping them together. And these four guys moving kind of as a unit is really important, especially when we're talking about offsides and set pieces and things like that. Your center backs have to be good communicators. And then the second thing is, for me, is being able to read the game, and being able to see what's in front of them and know when to step in and make a tackle, and to step into an attacker and or when to lay back. So being able to read the game and see what's in front of them and be able to react to some of the speedy attackmen. So for center backs also, if for example, if my guy up here moves forward, the other center back cannot be even with him. So they have to be able to talk to each other. So if one guy goes forward, the other one kind of has to drop a little bit to provide some cover in case he gets beat. His man beats him. So the communication piece, I think, is super important. And that's where a lot of goals actually end up happening, is from miscommunications or not talking at all with each other. So communication and being able to read the game are my two big attributes for center back. Zach, what you got, bud?
Yeah. So, and we're going to get into this in the next position when we start talking about the wingbacks. But the wingbacks have kind of changed what their responsibilities are in the game now. They used to sit back and kind of be just kind of statues on the sides. Now they're much more attacking minded. They push forward a lot. So what your center backs have to do nowadays is they have to, if your left back goes forward to play across, that left center back will have to rotate and push out to cover that area. And what that will also do is that center defensive midfielder will then in turn drop back and kind of take his spot. So it's all about rotation and covering down on other positions.
This feels like a chessboard.
Yes.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And as I said, like, goalies used to be the most, unathletic person. Back in the times before that, the next most unathletic person was your center back. They were usually very tall. they were slow, they were cumbersome, but they were very physical. Because you needed someone when the ball got inside the penalty area, you needed someone to kind of be that rough and tough, push the forwards around and not let them get off a clean shot. That's gone now. You need speed, you need agility, you need to be able to pass the ball as a center back now. And Virgil van Dijk, as much as it pains me to say it, as a Liverpool player, is probably the mecca of that type of player. Sergio Ramos, another crybaby who I really can't stand, is probably 1A or 1B for that position.
Yeah, and definitely we're gonna do is in the Stoppage Time FC group, we're gonna put up pictures of people that we mentioned tonight so that you can kind of get a feel for it. But definitely athleticism is important. Ability, again, to play the ball. We talk about your feet being important, but center backs, to Zach's point now, are much more involved in the start of an attack now, as opposed to when they would just get the ball, just kind of kick it as far as they can downfield. They start attacks. So your center back is now very much more, to be kind of cliche, is very much more of a footballer than he is a center back in 2020 for sure.
So, real quick, as we get into the next part of this, something interesting that Ty said, he says, is if I am a center back, how do I avoid fouls or cards? And is it worth it sometimes to go after the ball and take the foul or card?
Yes.
There's a term for that called a tactical foul. And that's when you step in and you intentionally go for the player instead of the ball and then put your hands up like this and say, I didn't do anything. What? And that is specifically to stop a dangerous attack where you know that if they get past you, it's a one-on-one with the keeper and it's likely going to be a goal. So that happens every match. And some guys are extremely good at doing that and getting away with it sometimes. But that's absolutely a good question, Ty. That's called a tactical foul. And there's times where you know for sure, it's kind of like in football where you could take the deep pass interference penalty over giving up the touchdown. And that's just to give your guys time to get back and to reset your defense and live to play the next play or the next free kick.
And then he also shouts out to MJ. MJ said checking in from Cooper's Hawk on a dinner date with the missus. Shh, she don't know. He said he go tune into it later. He appreciates us for this. Tyrell also came back and says, which position do most refs call fouls and cards on in a biased way?
Most, I would say, and we'll definitely talk about, because we're going to move into the midfield shortly, and that's where a lot of things happen, Ty. I would say most of the fouls are called typically your deepest central midfielder, your center back, and probably your fullback get most of the quote unquote fouls called. But again, we'll get into a little bit of that. That's a good question. But I would say center of the park, center that gets where a lot of the fouls.
And now I have a good question here.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that the four guys in the back, your two wing backs and your two center backs, are essentially junior goalies? They're there to assist the goalkeeper and make sure that the ball does not get past them.
They are, but the position we're going to talk about next, and definitely is a much more offensive position than what it was. So we're going to talk about that right now. So the two most outward positions that you just talked about, wingbacks. First of all, shout out to Germ using wingbacks as the terminology early. Start out to that. These are wingbacks, or sometimes they're called fullbacks. This is the football, in American football, Germ. This would be like a corner.
That's what they're on an island, it looks like. So that's what I'm looking at.
They're on an island, and they are essentially responsible for the entire side. So, Joe, if you could take either fullback and just drag them up and down the sideline. So, right now, at where Joe now, this is when they're in defense. So, when they're in defense, they are basically responsible for stopping the attack on that side. But in 2020, it's a much more offensive position. So once they get the ball, they pretty much can go down the sideline. So then it turns into an offensive position. Your fullbacks, and definitely want to bring Zach into this. First of all, you have to have unbelievable stamina. You have to have stamina to play this game in general. But as a fullback, you are running up and down that sideline for 90 minutes, whether you're in attack, whether you're in defense. So pace or speed is really important. Balance, because you're going to face the winger, which we're going to talk about here shortly, because you are responsible on defense. So this is a true two-way player. You are truly playing both ends of the field as a fullback. Zach?
Yeah, so for me, wingbacks now are the perfect example of a midfielder who doesn't quite have the creative ability to create goals by themselves, but they have a really good passing ability. And so, wingbacks are ones that like to take the ball up the side of the pitch, and they will cross the ball into the box for your forwards to either chest it down and take a shot on goal, or try and head it into the back of the net. Pace is paramount now. It's you have to have that quick player, because just so quickly as you are crossing that ball into the box, just like that, the other team is on a counterattack, and you have to get back on defense, because this game is quick. And especially when you have teams that like to play, we call it parking the bus. So they will sit back and they'll take a good majority of their defenders, and so Joe's kind of showing you what parking the bus is. They're going to take 10 of their 11, well, technically 9 of their outfield players and put them behind the halfway line. And so they're basically saying, we're not going to let you in and penetrate us through the center. So you're going to have to do it on the wings. And so this tactic is notorious for counterattacking. They can sprint right back off the ball, and next thing you know, you have a 3 or 4 on 1, 4 on 2 situation, and you're in trouble. So for me, pace is key.
Couldn't agree more with that. You guys killed that one. I don't think I have much to add on that one, because you guys hit the nail on the head.
And so just from a strategic point of view, so typically like the left back, if the left back is an attack, the right back, the opposite one, will typically stay back a little bit. We talked about rotation and things. You very rarely will, I mean, not actually very rarely, but it's not the best idea to send both of your fullbacks forward sometimes, because as you see, if you do pull them back forward, you leave this big gap right here.
On both sides.
So a team that can, you lose possession. A team can then go right to this area that you just left. And now you've got a center back who's dragged out, another center back who's dragged out, and you're all over the place. So typically you keep one of your fullbacks typically stays at home, or at least doesn't come up as far. But this is another position that's really changed, much more of an offensive position than it was back in my old days, so to speak.
Yeah, a lot of times going forward now, a lot of teams are taking their winger and tucking him in closer to let their wingback, their fullback, to get outside here. And then that gives them more guys in the box. And that allows for the wingback here to cross the ball into the penalty area and have more offensive players attacking the ball. In years past, these guys would be back here, and it would be the winger's responsibility to do that.
Yep.
They would get here, and they would be crossing. And now you can it's just numbers. It's a numbers game. You only got 1 or maybe 2 guys making runs into the box. You're against 4 guys. Percentages are not in your favor. So that's where people have been looking to create more space by allowing they're taking these guys back here and bringing them up into attack for that exact reason, to kind of make it more dangerous going forward, because you just got more bodies up there, which is why the wingbacks and the fullbacks need to be more skillful, and I've gotten more skillful nowadays and are able to hit some really nice crosses. Liverpool, again, hurts me to say it too, Zach. They got 3 of the best defenders in the world in their back line, between Van Dijk at center back, and they probably have the best fullback pairing in world football, and Andy Robertson and at left back, and Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. So those 3 guys right there have been extremely important in Liverpool's success, winning the Champions League and the Premier League recently. So,
you know, and just to highlight on how much this position has changed over the years, I think you can look no further than guys like Douglas Costa and Juan Cuadrado, who for the majority of their careers were right wingers. So they were attacking minded players who played at the very top of the game. But because the game has changed and evolved so much, they're now, like, Juan Cuadrado plays for Juventus, and he's their starting right back. He's their starting right wing back. And that's because his offensive ability to cross the ball and to put the ball in is needed. So, you know, this is a position that has changed a lot.
Jamaldo, any questions for you or from the people?
I don't have any current questions. I actually, like I said, when the chess reference really put a couple of things into place for me, and just so I can say this as well to other people, here's something interesting to think about. When you play a game of chess, every piece works together in harmony to either protect or attack positions, pieces, things of that nature. This is a lot like chess for those people out there who play chess. The wing backs, they do their thing going up and down the field here on the side. That's equivalent to those guys being like your rooks. It looks like your actual center backs. Those guys look like they'd be more like your bishops.
That's not bad. Yeah.
I like that. I like that reference a lot, actually.
You know,
really,
I'm just looking at it. I'm breaking it down, and it's starting to come to me a little bit easier because I can play chess. I'm a chess player. So this is actually not as hard as you may think if you have a chess reference or some type of understanding of just how when one thing drops, something else has to come to cover it. It's just you know, it's a machine.
It's about exploiting and creating space. That's what this comes down to. Moving the players around. It comes down to creating some space for someone else to run into that space, and making sure you're not leaving too many holes going back on defense for the other team to expose you. So it's really about tactical shifts in where players are going and just creating space. I mean, that's important in any sport that we're going to cover, that we cover. Just creating space and moving the opposing players out of their comfort zone and out of their position to create an advantage for one of your players. So it's not far off from some of the strategies and tactics that you use in other sports.
And one thing I'm gonna ask before you say that, the one thing I will ask is this: is it fair to say that it is more important for you to be a better defensive team in soccer, or do you need to be a better offensive team?
The way the rules are, because in 2020 again, it's not as physical a game as it once was. So there's more space, there's more time. So you obviously to score, you have to win to score goals. But I think you're seeing that teams now score a lot more, but where the goals come from varies now. It used to be where your strikers, we're going to talk about here shortly, your strikers score everything. Everything is scored by your strikers. But now goals come from everywhere. And you'll see, and we're going to talk about the midfield. Every position, with maybe the exception of center back and goalie, every position is an offensive position. You can get goal from pretty much anybody. mean, defense is definitely important, but just the way the game is played now, you can get away with not being the greatest defense if you score a lot.
You can't win games if you don't finish goals. So if you don't put a ball in the back of the net, it's not going to matter how good your defense is.
Now, is it fair to say? Okay, is it fair to say that? Because I remember you guys told me this as well. You said that the away team has an advantage when it's a tie situation.
In the Champions League.
Only in the Champions League.
Okay, cool. Okay, so only in the Champions League. Cool. Never mind. That solves the question right there. I don't need to ask the rest. Go ahead.
All right. So now we're gonna move into the midfield. Now we start to get into the glamorous parts of the game.
The glamorous pieces.
The glamorous pieces. So what we have here is a 3-man midfield, which is what most teams, not everybody, most teams in modern football play. So the deepest lying midfielder in the one in the middle it can be called a variety of things. You have a central defensive midfielder. The central defensive midfielder, just for American football reference, is like your middle linebacker. That's Ray Lewis right there. Now, he's surrounded by 2 other guys who are maybe more attack-minded. So we advancing the ball up the pitch. These 2 central midfielders will typically advance the ball. These are your guys who are going to create stuff. This is your great point guard. This is your mobile, not even mobile quarterback. This is your quarterback. These 2 guys are going to do the creation once we get into the final third. Joe and Zach definitely chime in. Here in midfielder, intelligence is really important. Vision is really important. Being able to keep control of the ball because you are going to be tightly defended is really important. And passing ability, really important. Those are some of the things that I think of when I think of a great central midfielder, whether he's a more attacking central midfielder or whether he's more a defensive type.
Zach, get in there, bud. I know one of these positions is your baby. So.
Yep, and I'm about to give Jerem his reference. All right, Jerem. Your holding midfielder or your central defensive midfielder, that's your queen for your chess reference.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most, in my eyes, you asked this question last show for the gentleman, what the most important position on the field is. They gave you the goalie and your forwards. For me, it's your central defensive midfielder. That's your engine. That's your queen. That is the field general, if you will.
Middle linebacker.
Middle linebacker. Without a good holding midfielder, I don't care how good your defense is, it's going to be suspect. For me, the holding midfielder is the mecca of all positions. I'm biased. I've always played that position. It's always been my favorite. But you need someone who has a never-ending motor. The holding midfielder is probably the person on that field that will run the most. They do not stop moving, ever. They're responsible for covering down on every single position if that position moves out of position, barring, obviously, the attacking players. But if any midfielder moves, if any center back moves, if any left back or right back moves, they're responsible for moving into that position to help cover down. They have to have the best vision on the field because they have to anticipate the play before it happens. If you don't have a good holding midfielder with good vision, you will likely get counterattacked to death because they'll be out of position and they won't see it coming. So for me, the holding midfielder is the best position if you want to think of the field general of the team. For me, and I am obviously biased, I think he is the best in the world. He's a World Cup winner. And the man is like 5'6". To be 5'6" and be the best holding midfielder in the world, N'Golo Kante, is otherworldly. Joe, what you got, man?
And that's because a lot of times these are your guys that are going to be breaking up play. They're going to be ones taking those tactical fouls that we talked about for Ty. So generally, your holding guy, your central defensive midfielder, they're a little bit more. Got a little more meat on their bones. They're a little taller, a little more physical, kind of like a more throwback type to years past. So having a guy that's his size, be able to boss the middle of the pitch like that and really run the show for Chelsea, and before that Leicester, he was instrumental in them winning their Premier League championship a while back. He is fantastic. Before him, before he came up, my guy at City, I think, was probably one of the better ones in the league, Fernandinho, and he isn't very big either. He's 5'10", maybe $160, so he's not a big guy either, but their ability to read the game and see the plays develop before they even happen and know where the ball is going to go and anticipate where the opposing offensive players are going to be moving to and running and making runs to is super important. And the midfield is fantastic because depending on where you're at and what formation you're playing, your responsibilities could change in game from being a guy who's going to hold back and kind of play in the back half and play a more defensive role. And then your team goes down a goal and they make a sub, and now you're pushing up here and you're making more runs up. And it's just, there's so much you can do with the midfield. There are so many more formations that would take us a long time to cover, that have other midfield positions. They have attacking midfielders as well, and they kind of play usually kind of right underneath the striker right here. And they're guys like David Silva, who's one of my guys, from formerly of City. And they're, like Ronnie said, the passing, the vision, the reading of the game is just vital for your midfielders. And they typically stay in the midfield, but they're running back and forth. They're the guys that are linking the play from the defensive players up to the attack. And especially in nowadays where teams are playing possession-based football, where they want to have the ball more than the opposing team, their passing ability and their movement in the midfield is key. You have to have a strong 3, 4, 5 guys in the midfield, depending on the formation you're playing, to keep a hold of the ball and to keep control of the game. So these guys are probably some of the most important guys that you're going to have on the field.
Yeah. And Joe talked about these 3 pieces, especially if you don't have, and a lot of teams maybe will not play with a designated defensive central midfielder. For some teams who don't, the CDM in our diagram will also go basically what they call a box to box. This is a guy who basically is responsible from everything in the middle of the park, from one penalty box to the other. He's going to start the attack. He's going to break up the attack on one end. He's going to push the ball back down the field on the other. Or he's going to push it and give it to one of these other 2 central midfielders, who then now initiate the attack. So again, Jeremy talked about the chess reference. As one rotates up, one rotates back. One makes a drive and run forward, the other one comes back. So these 3 talked about communication and intelligence. All 3 of us can't go forward at one time. All 3 of us can't be too far back at one time. Otherwise, we'll not be able to get to our attacker. But game intelligence, vision, passing, able to possess the ball, all important traits of the central midfielder.
So the wingbacks and the central defensive midfielder, those guys all pretty much, they're pretty much the offensive guys, with the central midfielder being a guy who helps with with defensive purposes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, like for instance, Joe, if you move, if your wingback, let's say Joe, the wingbacks come forward, the central defensive midfielder will typically slide back.
The center backs will kind of spread a little bit, and then the defensive midfielder will kind of drop to kind of create a back three of guys in the back to create cover and help for the goalie.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay,
With
cool.
the assumption that the wingbacks will get back as soon as they are no longer a part of the play.
Yep.
So basically another thing too here that we add to this equation is that the only time a player is leaving its particular station is when it is in transition on an offensive play or moving to cover on a defensive play. Otherwise, they stay in a general area, for lack of better terms.
For the most part, the midfielders get a
Yeah.
little bit more freedom to roam, and if you're a really good player like Kevin De Bruyne or some of those guys that are at an elite level, they're given a lot of license and freedom by their manager to kind of roam wherever they see their opportunity to go. So your elite guys get a little bit more leash to improvise, but and it really depends on also if you're the team that's favored. Like for Man City, their guys are a little more open, a little more free flowing, and they're playing against lower tier teams. Like for today example with West Brom, their key to getting a point out of that match was keeping their shape and keeping their guys where they're supposed to be and not getting out of position. So it really depends on the strategy that your manager is putting out. And if you're trying to just hold on and you're a lower level team that's trying to stop a high flying attack like Liverpool or Chelsea or sometimes Tottenham, it really depends on your coach and your manager. Sometimes they want you to just be in your space and we're all going to stay in our area and just kind of set up shop.
So like in that
Tyrell got two questions real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think y'all can answer these like quickly. How important are substitutions and fresh legs?
They're vital.
They're vital.
Okay. And the next question he says, how can a coach and team game plan for a team that does well with possession? And then the second part is, can you be a winning team with subpar possession?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Tottenham does it every week. So yes.
Whoa.
So possession in football, it is important to have the ball because if you don't have the ball, you can't score. But it's how you use it. So again, central midfielders who can keep the ball, but as we're going to talk about next, it's what you do with it. And this moves us to the stars. For the stars, the guys who get the fancy shoe deals, the big money, the glory, and that's these three up front. Your left wing, your right wing, and your striker. This is another position. I'm not gonna say this has changed, but there are some differences now from when I grew up. So let's start with the striker, dead in the middle. In 2020, the striker plays away from the goal a lot more than he used to. In the 90s and 2000s, and Joe, you can move him into a penalty box. Your striker was pretty much in the penalty box most of the time because they were saying, hey, get goals. So they just move inside the box, inside the penalty area. They're looking for open spaces to get off shots. That was what it used to be. Now, the striker plays a little bit further away. And this is it's now becoming a more creative position. So he gets the ball, and now his two wingers, the left and the right wing, make runs off of him. And they're running now into the box. So, yes, your striker still needs to score goals. But in 2020, he's got to be a little bit more of a creative. He's got to be able to see. Strikers got to have vision, too, because you got to be able to see this run, feel where defenders are. Some of the best strikers in the world now are guys like Harry Kane at Tottenham, Robert Lewandowski at Bayern Munich, great scorers, but also guys who can get their ball outside the box, turn, face up a defender, make a pass, or get a shot.
Yeah, Joe kind of had it there at the end, but depending on the league that you play in, kind of depends on what kind of 4-3-3 you play. It's almost as if your striker is more inverted than what it used to be. So yeah, and just like that, your striker is pretty much he's really a lot more responsible in the build-up play. And you don't see this as much in the Premier League as you do in other leagues, especially Germany. Germany and Italy are fantastic at this. Their strikers are really good at coming back to the ball, receiving the ball, distributing it out to either the wingers or the wide midfielders, and in turn playing that quick passing that it's a term called tiki-taka football. It's quick passing. It's quick touches. You don't have the ball at your feet very long, because the longer you have it at your feet, the more likely you are to lose possession. Whereas the English game is still very physical compared to the other leagues. So your strikers are still, barring the Harry Kanes, Olivier Giroud is really good at it. They're much more bigger and physical, and they can play that. It's called a false nine role, where you sit further down in the midfield. Yeah, your striker is completely changed. Gone are the days that, like Ron said, that you sit in the box and you kind of drift left, drift right to find passes so you could make a quick turn and take a shot.
Yeah, and the goal here, the idea behind that is you have to find new ways to score. You can't. In the years past, there was 2 or 3 ways you're going to get goals every game, and now as the game evolves more, you have to find different ways to move your players around that are going to in turn move the defense in different ways. So when we drop the striker up here and he picks the ball up more in midfield and he's got the ball here, that allows so many more options, because you got your midfielders and here that can kind of make runs off of him and cut in. And if he gets it here, you got your left wingers who are moving. There's just so many more options going forward when you have your striker pick up the ball right around here. And if they're good, and they can hold, they call it hold up play, and they can receive the ball and fend off a defender and keep the ball for a couple of seconds, that gives the central defenders the center backs have to move up. And that kind of just creates a lot more open space for your midfielders to move and for your wingers to move forward. That's partly that's kind of the idea behind having what Zach mentioned, the inverted striker, and having him not pick up the ball, not just stand in the penalty box. Now he is got more responsibility on his shoulders than teams have had in the past. So that's kind of why you want to have your striker picking up the ball and more in the midfield role. And that's just to create more avenues to move the ball through the defense and to create more space.
Kareem Benzema is really good at that too.
So how about this? Big shot. That's equivalent to me catching the ball at the free throw line and initiating offense from the free throw line in basketball.
Yep, exactly.
That is a high post, low post player. This is a striker.
So that's literally what that is. That's all he's doing is catching. So it's essentially just saying catching the ball more at the free throw line with more options open for everybody around you to be able to be a threat to score a goal.
Exactly. That's why you're seeing more goals coming from the midfielders now, and not just from the guys up front. Is because
I better slow down because I'm learning now.
These guys are picking up the ball here and creating more space. And Zach had mentioned the quick passes and the one touch passing and not lingering on the ball too much. I think we were talking about an NBA player who likes to do that in pregame show, Mr. Harden.
So that's a really good reference though, for anybody out there for basketball. So when you see the zones and you see people playing at the free throw line, that's a perfect reference there. Now that I understand what each position does, now I feel a lot more understanding of the game, because now I know I'm not just looking at people running. I think the consensus is people don't think that soccer is organized.
It's quite the opposite.
It's cool.
But it has to be organized considering everything that's going on. Isn't it 22 players on the field just like regular football?
Yeah, it's 11 on 11.
Oh, man, y'all done messed up.
So to wrap this up, the position that now has really become more of a goal scoring position are your two wingers. So your wingers, this is American football. This is your wide receiver. This is A.J. Brown, Odell Beckham. This is Devontae Adams. These are the guys who are now becoming the goal scorers. And these are typically guys who are not only fast, but they're great dribblers. They can get the ball out wide. They can beat their man one-on-one, as Joe demonstrated there. Or we talked about the fullback earlier. So your fullback drives the ball, and then your left wing or right wing, whichever side you come in, then makes a run to the box. But this has become, again, we talk about transition. In my olden days in the 2000s, the winger was more the creator. He would get the ball, drive it, and feed our big striker. 2020, the striker feeds him now.
So no more pick and roll. So no more pick and roll now with the no more pick and roll now. Now we hitting the wingman for the 3-pointer.
Yep, your wingman now is your scorer. So you're talking about guys like Jerm. You're gonna be running this, but in the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So in modern football, you have guys like Mohamed Salah, who plays for Liverpool. All these names we're gonna put up in stoppage time, so don't worry about writing them down. Mohamed Salah, who plays for Liverpool, Kylian Mbappe, who plays for Paris Saint-Germain, are your Sadio Mane. Some of your great wide players are now your better scorers, and they are the flash. Like if you want to see more of the flash of the game, it's out on the perimeter. It's out wide.
Now, just a caveat on what he said. You got guys like A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams. They're great wide receivers. The wingers are also the prima donnas. So they're the Terrell Owens. They're the Chad Ochocinco's. They are flashy. A lot of them are loud. And a lot of them will do whatever it takes to get the end result. And I really can't stand this aspect of his game, but I can never deny the man's talent. You look at a guy like Neymar, who is probably, other than Pele, will probably be the greatest Brazilian ever to play the game. He's on the opposite side of Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe is not the player he is today without having Neymar. He's that much of a game changer. And he's kind of soft and he likes to flop a little bit at the first sign of contact. But he's effective. And sometimes you need that. You need that type of player to change games. And you look at guys like Messi, you look at guys like Neymar. Ronaldo's game, CR7's game, has kind of changed. He was a winger. He's now kind of more of a central striker. He's kind of interchangeable there. But Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, Heung-min Son, just to name a few. Now, and he's not on this level yet, and I don't know if he ever will get on this level. But for the Americans, if you want an American name that has potential like some of these guys, Christian Pulisic has potential like them. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying that he's going to go down as one of the greats of all time or anything like that, but he shows some of those same flashes that you see guys like Neymar and Mbappe routinely.
One of the subtle shifts from this position is in years past, even just a couple of years ago, you would have a left-footed player on the left wing. That's something we haven't really talked about, is the dominant foot of some of these guys. A lot of times they would have a right-footed player on the right wing and a left-footed player on the left wing, so they could push up the field with their left foot on their dominant foot and then hit across in with their dominant foot. Now, a lot of times you have your left winger is a right foot dominant player, so he can kind of cut up the field and then cut back onto his right foot to come in this way, which allows your left-footed left back that space to come up here. So something that we haven't mentioned in any of these positions really is the dominant foot of some of these guys. And so that's one of the subtle shifts that have happened, where they're putting right-footed players at the left wing and the left-footed players on the right wing, so they can kind of cut in to the penalty box on their dominant foot to give them a better shot on goal, which is why we're also seeing them score quite a lot of goals now and kind of being that flashy player. So that is also an important thing to mention, is the dominant foot of some of the players in any position, really. That just kind of popped up while y'all were talking, but I think you guys crushed it.
That's a great point. I know obviously he's not the scorer yet. Hopefully he becomes that, but like I know for Arsenal, Nicola Pepe is a right winger whose dominant foot is his left foot. Like if he cuts in on his left foot, he's gonna shoot 90% of the time. So yeah, that's definitely a big change, is that your winger now typically is the opposite foot that they have. The dominant foot, they play on the opposite side of their dominant foot.
I know there's more questions out there. What you guys got?
Actually, no more questions or anything else like that right now. I think that's a digest. Everybody's digesting some things. This has great replay value. I encourage everybody to watch this video a couple of times if you need to. Now that I'm getting this into football and basketball terms, I'm about to start making soccer plays.
And it's funny about that. And we talked about, it's just, people think it's just running around, or it's very organized. So you may not see a guy call a signal or hold up two fingers, but depending on situation, players know what they're supposed to do depending on situation. So you may not hear hut 1, hut 2, hut 3, or a guy hold up number 1 for play number 1, but guys know if this ball gets to this spot, I'm supposed to be here. And that's an offense and the midfield and attack. You know exactly where you're supposed to be. So you may not necessarily see a play run, but guys know where they're supposed to be.
They know their role.
Yeah, they know their role. They know where they're supposed to be.
Quick question, man. What shape do you kind of see all over the pitch here between players? What shape do you see between all these different players? You can see it all over the field with this setup.
Triangles.
There's triangles everywhere, and that's kind of what you're looking for to create all over the field, so you have options and passing lanes and options, just like you would have in basketball. So they're trying to create little triangles all over the field to work the ball from defense up to midfield and all the way up to attack. So you see triangles kind of everywhere, and that's huge in soccer.
And if you don't see a triangle, it's because it's a different formation, and you'll see a diamond.
Yep.
Which is actually still 2 triangles technically anyway. I told y'all I got this.
You
all right.
You do. You're a sharp guy, bro.
But this right here, Tyrell agrees with everything. He says, "Hey, this was a damn good show, very informative." I can't disagree. One last question for the road, fellas. He says, other than the manager, who is important for coming up with the game plan and scouting?
Ooh, that's a good one. just like in any major professional sport, the manager has a team, and there are assistant managers, and there are scouting directors, and there are technical advisors, and they all play a different role. The team usually relies heavily on the first chair. So your first assistant coach is responsible for a lot of scouting. Most of these teams have all played each other so many times that they have a good, idea of what that team is about. But when you get into Champions League and things like that, and you need information, your first assistant coach is going to be responsible for coming up with scouting and things like that, and he will in turn talk to the manager, who will make changes based on that. And you'll see formation changes, you'll see players substituted, and they're not starting because they're going to be better off on the bench. And credit to Ty earlier asking the crucial question about substitutes. Substitutes sometimes will be very strategic in the fact that they will leave a normal starter on the bench, knowing that they're going to bring them on at the 70-minute mark or the 60-minute mark because of the spark that they're going to create. So it's just like chess in the fact that it's all about strategery. And yes, I know that's a made-up word.
No, it's not. That's a real word.
Yeah, we're gonna have another Know Your Role in the future where we talk about rules. But I'm not gonna go through every rule, but the substitution rule is a big one. There's a big difference between soccer and American sports in the fact that you only get 3 subs a match.
Period.
So you have to be, as Zach talked about, there's a strategy to when you sub. Because you're only going to get 3 of them in a whole 90-minute match. So you can't obviously burn a sub too early, because then you won't have any left for later. So when you sub is important, who you sub. So yeah, but we're going to talk about that in the future Know Your Role, about
God forbid you get an injury.
Yeah, injuries can throw off an entire game plan because you only get to 3 subs per match. So, but that's going to be a future Know Your Role. Things like rules and strategy and things like that, how that works for sure.
Something to answer Ty's question real quick on the game plan piece. If you have Amazon Prime, and there are a couple of teams that have got all or nothings documentaries done on them. Man City, Tottenham have had them. I think Juventus has had one on maybe Netflix. But yeah, well, they give a really good insight into what goes on behind the scenes with the backroom staff and the assistant coaches, and who is responsible for drawing up set piece plays and against how to defend the corners and things like that. And those give you a really good insight into the other levels of an organization. So you get to see what the directors do, how they transfers go down, and what goes on inside the locker rooms. So I would highly recommend checking those out if you have Amazon Prime. The Man City one that I've watched was fantastic and well done. Strictly, as a City fan, awesome. But if you're just watching to learn more, it's a really good watch. And Tottenham has one going on right now too.
Before we stop off here and cut off, this kind of just came to me based on what Ronnie had said earlier, that we were going to start posting some of these players. What I want to do is I want to challenge each one of you on the show. I think we both need to come up with our ideal starting 11. And we're going to plug in any player that we want based on this formation that we use today, on what you want in your ideal player for each position. Obviously, you know who's going to be my holding midfielder.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely do that. So look out for that. Because again, this is just stuff to get you all started. You know, things like this. The goal of this is for you all to explore now and do your own research and look this up. So Joe, Zach, and I are gonna kind of give you some stuff to start off with. And then we're gonna kind of let you do your own. I think one of the things about this game, how I learned it, and I'm pretty sure how Joe and Zach learned it, is that you just kind of just stumble on some stuff. And you just kind of start watching. You just kind of just pick things up as you go along. So we'll be here as resources, but this is now for you all to kind of do your own exploration with, for sure.
One of these days, you're gonna have Trav time, and when you have Trav time, you just need to dive in, fall down the rabbit hole, and get lost because you'd be surprised what you'll find.
And just something to add to everything here as we wrap up the show. I mean, everybody normally goes when you go out to a wing spot, when we go get wings, do you really go to watch one game or do you go to watch a plethora of games? So this right here encourages you now. Now you can watch football, baseball, basketball all at one time at the house now. We have that capability. Have fun. This is why sports are so fun for a lot of us. I mean, we be having TVs going. We be talking to each other, talk about the games and stuff sometimes. It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun stuff that goes on in this game if you really pay it attention. I can actually tell you from the stuff that these guys have sent me, from the stuff that I've been researching myself, learning this stuff today as the background information, now I really understand what I'm seeing. So now you have created a monster because now I think I can coach soccer.
Hey,
I got visions of kicking and screaming.
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to go.
Classic. So we're gonna wrap this up. Remember, if you're on Twitter, SCEN_THE, Stoppage Time FC has its own Twitter account. Zach got that straightened out for us. So Stoppage Time, STOPPAGE, Stoppage Time FC. It's all one word on Twitter. Facebook group, Stoppage Time FC. Instagram, THE.SCEN. The Scene on Instagram. Ron, Joe, Zach, Germ, signing out. This is Stop.